What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about 7 times that Canada transformed the world. So, as an American, I have to say, I think Canada really doesn't get enough credit here in the United States. And I can say for sure that we definitely did not learn about any of Canada's contributions to the world in school, except maybe for like maple syrup. So today, I want to take a look at this video and learn about some of the times that Canadians actually helped influence and change the world. So let's take a look.
Our first travel takes us to 1999, deep underground. To be precise, 2 kilometers below the surface of northern Ontario, inside a working nickel mine near Sudbury. It's dark and completely silent. Researchers describe it as one of the quietest places on Earth because it's shielded from cosmic radiation and external noise by way too much rock. Here, scientists built a glowing sphere this size of a small house, filled with 1,000 tons of heavy water.
What is this? Huh? I don't know about this. What are you guys getting up to up there in Canada? What are you getting up to? What is this?
It's water made with a heavier form of hydrogen and surrounded by thousands of sensors, all waiting to detect something that passes through everything: neutrinos. They are tiny and nearly invisible particles created by nuclear reactions in the cores of stars like the Sun. The mystery of the solar neutrino problem haunted physicists for decades, until 1990s. That's when the team of Canadian and international scientists led by Dr. Arthur MacDonald from Queen's University built the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory, 2 kilometers underground, to block all other radiation to hopefully gain precision.
Wow. That's pretty fascinating. That's cool. And definitely something that, like, just in general, I feel like research like this and researchers that conduct studies like this don't get enough praise. And it's like, congratulations in general, enough attention. Because there's probably so many little studies like this, not necessarily with neutrinos, but just lots of stuff like this with medicine and physics and chemistry that you just never hear about, but this is cool. Canadian, maybe particularly because of the sort of spectacular fashion in which this Canadian team of scientists had to go about this, like tunneling like miles underground so that the rock shielded everything so you could accurately detect and measure and count the neutrinos properly and understand the behavior. That's really cool.
Now, let's rewind further in time to the 1870s. In Canada, the railways are expanding westward. Towns are springing up. Schedules matter more than ever. But there is a tiny issue. Each town uses local time when the sun reaches its peak. So in one town it might be 12 o'clock, and in another nearby town it might already be 12:20.
Sure.
This is obviously chaos for any sort of coordination, let alone train schedule coordination. Sanford Fleming.
Are we talking about time zones? Did a Canadian invent time zones? Based off, like, trains being inconvenient? Did Canada invent time zones?
A railway engineer by trade, experiences it firsthand. One story goes that he missed a train because of the schedule confusion tied to the inconsistent times. And that frustration led him to ask, what if the world agreed on something better? That's how, in 1879, he formally proposed a system dividing the world into 24 time zones.
What? No freaking way. I did not know that. A Canadian, and this is huge. Is any other, like, invention going to top this one on this entire list? This is insane. Because this is like something that affects all of us every day. As a matter of fact, it's something that we all kind of take for granted. But at one point, there was some Canadian guy who was super annoyed at trains. That's what it took. A lot of... It's funny how many inventions are, the product of being really annoyed at something and then, coming up with a solution.
Each 1 hour apart, and linking that to a standard meridian. At the 1884 International Meridian Conference, his ideas were adopted, and over subsequent decades, the world gradually synchronized.
Wow! Talk about a time where a Canadian transformed the entire world. We owe him a big for this one. This is a huge one.
Now, let's shift to the early 1940s. The world is at war, and in quiet offices across Canada, scientists are working on something few people will ever hear about. Among them was a man from Winnipeg, William Stevenson, codenamed Intrepid. He helped establish Camp X, a secret training base in Ontario, where...
What's with all these secretive Canadian, bases and experiments going on, Again, it's like, the first one was like this huge neutrino sphere built miles underground. This is like the secret military base. What do you guys... I mean, I shouldn't be too, skeptical here, because apparently it's a good thing when Canadians do secret operations, because you end up changing the world, apparently.
Agents learned radio interception, sabotage, and covert operations. From there, Stevenson's reach extended far beyond Canada. He moved to New York as head of Britain's Western Hemisphere Intelligence, the British Security Coordination. From an unassuming office in Rockefeller Center, he built networks of spies. He coordinated propaganda and served as the vital link between Churchill and Roosevelt.
Whoa!
It's hard to imagine now, but the Allies were losing ground back in the day. Hitler's forces seemed unstoppable, communications were fragile, and code systems were primitive. Stevenson and his Canadian-trained agents quietly changed that, embedding intelligent networks across the Americas, advancing encryption, and defining new standards for clandestine warfare.
Wow! You know what I really like about this list that they've made? These are really, really, really important innovations and practices that these Canadians, implemented, like the time zones and the encrypting messages and all these practices that they made standard for the military. And what I love about this list is these are things that are so important that you really never think about unless you're some code breaker in the military, like in the 1940s or whatever. But stuff that really doesn't get enough attention, let alone that it's stuff that Canadians, pioneered and came up with. So this is really cool.
Now, let's travel in time and also dig inside the Earth in the 1960s.
Again?
Half a century earlier, Alfred Wegener had proposed the idea of continental drift. But most geologists still struggled with it. The idea that continents could move sounded plausible, yet no one could really explain how, why, or by which mechanisms.
That is so freaking cool. That is so cool. Because some of these things I've heard about. I remember in school, I heard about this stuff, actually. Like continental drift and neutrinos and time zones, and you learn about this stuff. But you don't learn who did it. You don't learn who helped come up with it, which was a lot of Canadians. That's really cool.
After all, the Earth's crust appeared rigid and immovable. And here comes J. Tuzo Wilson, a Canadian geophysicist. He noticed something odd. In places like Hawaii, volcanic islands line up in a chain. Big and active at one end, and smaller and extinct at the other. Earthquakes seemed to follow similar invisible lines. Wilson realized that these weren't random. He proposed the idea of hotspots. He introduced another key idea, transform faults. These discoveries tied everything together. Wilson showed that Earth's crust isn't a solid shell. It's broken into moving plates.
That's so cool. It sounds like he discovered like stuff about earthquakes and tectonic plates and continental drift, and that's really, really cool. Talk about stuff that is underappreciated, but it, again, is just stuff we kind of take for granted to know about now.
Let's move to a quiet lab in Toronto in the early 1960s. Two scientists, Till and McCullough, are working on mice and bone marrow transplants. They conduct radiation experiments, and one day they observe something remarkable. Certain bone marrow cells in mice can divide again and again, forming colonies and replenishing blood cells. They published their landmark work in 1961, showing the existence of multipotent stem cells in mammals.
I thought the time zone thing was going to be like the most mind-blowing one. Canadian scientists discovered stem cells, which are a huge part of modern medicine and something that I think they're still studying all the use cases for, but I know stem cells are like huge and possibly something that could even be used more in the future. But the idea that a cell can adapt and you can put it in different parts of the body and it will kind of acclimate to where it is and become like the cells that you put it around. This is something I remember, again, from sort of a biology class that I never knew a Canadian discovered.
These are the cells that can turn into different types of blood cells. Why was this such a big thing? Well, because it proved that the body has a built-in repair system, tiny cells that can regenerate and heal.
Yeah, and then like the hope is that you can like harvest these cells and use them like in other parts of the body, targeted to try to repair parts of the human body. Really, really like cutting edge, huge stuff, like big medical breakthrough. And it was Canadians who discovered it and published this. That is amazing.
We're coming back to the 1990s now, the era of the best pop music and rising anxiety about the environment. Back then, not everyone was convinced that the atmosphere could change. Some people doubted whether the ozone layer was even thinning. After all, it's invisible, and life on the surface seemed normal. All good.
No way. These are all like very, very, very important things. This one's about like the degradation of the ozone, like with, I don't know, aerosol cans and all that stuff that like destroys the atmosphere, and which is obvious like very, very, very important for humans to know about. This is so cool. Like,
Good, right? But then the data started piling up. Satellites showed a giant ozone hole over Antarctica. Dermatologists reported rising skin cancer rates. Pilots noticed stronger UV glare at high altitudes. The evidence wasn't a theory anymore, it was measurable, visible, and showing up in people's lives. The ozone layer, that thin blue shield protecting us from the sun's ultraviolet radiation, was indeed weakening. So the question became,
scary to think about.
how do you warn people about something that they can't even see until it's too late? That question landed on the desks of a small team of Canadian scientists at Environment Canada, now known as Environment and Climate Change Canada.
Wow.
These guys decided to turn invisible danger into something that everyone could understand. The idea came from two Canadian atmospheric scientists, Dr. James B. Kerr, a physicist based in Toronto, and Dr. C.T. McElroy, working in Montreal.
Oh, wow.
Both were veterans in ozone radiation research, measuring UV intensity from ground-based spectrophotometers and balloons. They realized that they were sitting...
Thank God we have these crack teams of Canadian geniuses that I didn't even know about.
They realized that they were sitting on data that could literally save lives. But it was locked in academic papers and graphs that nobody outside a lab could interpret. So, in 1992, Kerr and McElroy, working with the Environment Canada's Atmospheric Environment Service, developed a simple scale, the Ultraviolet Index, or UV Index. It was a simple...
Okay, so maybe they already knew about the ozone being destroyed and the problems. What the Canadian team here came up with was not that, but rather this UV index on how to approach this problem?
number, typically from 0 to 11, translating complex radiation doses into something that everyone could use.
Wow. Don't they like put this? Yeah, they like put this on the weather apps and like the Weather Channel now, right? Like UV index stuff to like let you know how harmful the sun's rays are. Yeah, they literally made a scale so people would understand how to protect themselves. So that's really cool, taking something that's sort of gibberish and science mumbo jumbo and but is important and making it into something simple and easy that regular people can understand and benefit from. That's, to me, that's awesome.
Let's travel back to Toronto in 1921. A young doctor named Frederick Banting, with the help of a medical student, Charles Best, managed to isolate insulin, a hormone that could control blood sugar levels in diabetic patients. Before that, a diabetes diagnosis was a slow, certain death sentence. There were no treatments, no hope, only starvation diets that delayed the inevitable. But within months of their discovery at the University of Toronto, patients who had been days from death began recovering.
Wow.
It was, without exaggeration, a medical miracle. By 1920...
This sounds familiar because I did react to some Canadian Heritage Minutes, and one of them definitely had to do with insulin. So this sounds familiar, Canadians discovering or manipulating insulin.
1922, the world was desperate to get access to this liquid gold. Pharmaceutical companies saw enormous profit potential, but Banting, Best, and their research director John MacLeod, among with chemist James Collip, believed insulin should never belong to a corporation. They wanted it to belong to humanity. So in 1923, The three inventors made a radical choice. They sold the patent for the insulin to the University of Toronto for $1 each.
That is so freaking cool. That is so freaking cool. Okay, so they did like discover insulin or how to bottle it up and use it and help people with diabetes. And this part, that's cool. I think I knew that, or at least heard some about that. This part, this is just as cool because it's like what you do with that. That's like $1 billion discovery for one thing, especially nowadays, especially in the US where medicine is a business for making money. Anyway, they could have become rich, I'm sure, but it would have entailed, selling this for some kind of high cost, which would be prohibitive to some of the people who need it. They knew that, and they sold the patent for nothing, basically, and made it so everybody could get this who needed it. That's incredible. Incredibly Canadian, by the way. I love that.
Banting famously said, "Insulin does not belong to me, it belongs to the world."
That's so freaking cool.
So there you have it. 7 Canadian moments of quiet power, subtle change, but very big impact.
That was awesome. This is an awesome YouTube channel called Make That Change, who came up with this list. So many things about Canada that I'd never known, never appreciated. Canada has come up with a lot of stuff that we take for granted now. A lot of really, really important stuff that we use every day. Some of it is for convenience, some of it saves lives. And yeah, like I was saying at the beginning, I think Canadians need more acknowledgement for this awesome stuff that you don't necessarily get here in the US. So I'm really glad that I took a look at this. This was fascinating, super cool, and really, honestly raised my respect for Canada. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on any of these ways that Canadians change the world, really. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canadian things that I've never seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.